Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Stephen Nussbaum. In the podcast, I invite my guests to come on, talk to me all about their musical tastes, their memories, their experiences, and I get to collate their fantasy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. We are now on episode 140. I cannot believe we've done 140 of these bad boys. Thanks to everyone who's listened to, if it's one episode, if it's all 140, your support doesn't go unnoticed and is massively appreciated. Now, I can't believe, 1st of October, right? I can't believe we're in October, so the year is flying by. And before we start this one, I just want to say a massive thank you to Ian Key, who was my last guest in the 139th episode. Great guest, great guy. He's got a great show called The Indie Brunch. So if you haven't listened to his podcast or his show, which is available on Mixcloud and on Louder Than War Radio, make sure you do, because you will be in for an absolute treat and won't regret it. So thank you, Ian. That was 139, and let's go now to 140. And this week, it's a triple header, as I have three members of one of the best bands around picking up where their fellow Heavy North bandmates Kenny, Jose and Steve left off in episode 96. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Andy Horrocks, Mark Rice and Jack Birch. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, mate.
Guys, I saw you at the Water Rats earlier in the year. We discussed the remaining members of the band coming on before your brand new album came out, which I'm really excited to talk to you about. And thank you for making the time to come on. I can't wait to hear all about your musical tastes and experiences and everything Heavy North. But before we do, I always like to ask my guests how they're doing from a mental health perspective. I think it's really important we talk about it, make sure everyone's all right. So Andy, as you're on my screen first, I'll start with you, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah. Even better for being here, mate. Thanks for having us on.
Mate, pleasure. Jack, how are you doing? Are you well?
Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, general Monday vibes, really. But yeah, I'll be great by Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in work. It's a bit of a moody day, but I'll get by.
Jack will get by. And Mark, how are you, mate?
Not bad, man. A bit battered by hay fever today, and then I've just been having to do a punk session on drums, which wasn't fun, but it's a bit battered and a bit tired, but other than that sounds.
So Mark, let me stick with you then. So let me take you back. How did you first get into playing music, and what were your earliest musical memories?
So this is the funny thing. I don't fully remember how it happened. My whole family plays guitar. So my mum and dad, they met through playing guitar. The mum worked in a music shop and stuff, so it's always been there. But my earliest musical memory is just being asked if I wanted to go to drum lessons. I think a mate of mine from school was going. I was a bit of a sort of do you want to go with him and have a go at it, So the earliest memory is being about 8 years old, just in a group of about 20 kids, all just getting up and having a little bash on a drum kit, learning our first beat and everything. And I don't really remember how I came on. So I think just because my whole family's musical, it just kind of went that way. And yeah, and then we started, so my earliest sort of experience was playing we used to play djembe and African percussion ensembles and everything like that. So my earliest memory is doing big concerts, we were all playing traditional African instruments and djembes and stuff like that. And then going on to the music service where I was doing the wind orchestra stuff before moving on to bands and that. So that was my earliest sort of experience before going on to the band scene.
So Andy, what about your memories, and obviously you play the bass in the band, and I'm aware that a lot of bass players don't start on the bass, will start on a different instrument. What was your earliest musical memories in your journey into the bass?
Into bass particularly, it was only when I started in the Heavy North, really. I remember turned up for the first session with my guitar, and they were like, "Have you got left in?" And I was like, I thought I was playing guitar. No, you're on bass. So I had to go and buy a bass to then be in the band. But then I bought a short scale Mustang bass which on some of the earlier photos up until maybe a year ago, I bought a long scale bass. I started doing a couple of lessons and stuff, just getting technique better. I was getting cramp in my hand and blah blah blah, so the usual tiresome stuff for bad technique, because I was used to playing guitar. And then from then really just sort of took off. I started doing loads of different genres and stuff, but lessons and just enjoying writing again. Really, I went off writing for a fair bit until I started playing bass again with the band lads, and then you find your way again in a new instrument, I guess. So yeah.
And Jack, what about your early musical memories? Obviously, you play guitar in the band, so tell us about your journeys and how you got into playing the guitar.
Yeah, of course. But I feel like most people had a few good influences. So my Uncle Danny, my dad's brother, he's quite cool. He got me playing guitar. I was about 12. He started me off. Got me into my first couple of proper bands that I really took to, which would have been Pink Floyd, The Doors, Stone Roses. But then I've got two older brothers as well who are quite a bit older, like 12 and 14 years respectively. So like they were in their pomp when I was like a kid. I was talking like mid to late 90s. And I've kind of grew up to develop my oldest brother's music taste. We were just like totally aligned on everything we listened to. But my other brother Sam, like I say, it was the mid to late 90s, and he's always been like really current on music, and he always had a vast CD collection. It was a lot of Britpop like around about that time. So he got me into some cool bands as well. I remember he like uploaded a load of Delta Shakedown singles onto me at one point, and he was really into Suede as well. I mean, I wouldn't say the same about Sam. There's a lot of stuff he listens to that I wouldn't normally listen to, like Madonna, Kylie. we're not aligned on that. But no, there's a couple of things I could credit him for. Suede, he was banging to Suede. He even modelled himself on Brett Anderson at one point. Really like them. So yeah, just everything. Yeah, they listened to, I kind of took to, and then guitar playing. I never ever sort of. I was just on a kind of trajectory. Then at 12, I picked it up, and those first couple of years were like really, I didn't really do much else. I was just hammering guitar. So I got all right in quite a short space of time, and then I've always managed to stay in bands pretty much all ever since then. First got into bands probably late teens, but then I've always had something on the go musically, playing guitar.
Mark, I feel like I kind of cut you off as you were about to kind of give your story into band. So you started off playing drums, in percussion, and found your way into bands. So tell me about your journey into the Heavy North and before that, I guess.
So before the Heavy North, it goes back a little bit, actually. I won't do all of it, but I've been in quite a few bands of varying degrees of doing stuff. Like some of them, whether they recorded or were gigging, like probably about 10 bands or so. So I've always been in bands in some form. The earliest one was just around the time everyone in my school started getting into guitar, when I think the school was like a battle of the bands or something. I think it was like year 9, year 10. And that's when everyone sort of started going, I want to play guitar, and who plays drums? I've always been playing drums since I was about 8. So I joined a few bands then. Before the Heavy North, I was kind of just milling about playing in different bands. Like I was sort of getting into the session sort of stuff, playing with a few people. That's how I kind of met Jose and everyone, because he's our producer as well. He has the studio upstairs and that. And I just got invited. So just after milling about, doing a few sessions, playing in a bunch of bands around Liverpool, I ended up just being invited to the studio one day for a little jam, same as Andy, same way he turned up with the bass and everything. I just went from there.
And why do you think, I guess this is a question open to all of you, why does the Heavy North work so well, right? Because the 6 of you obviously have an amazing musical connection, and I feel like as soon as a riff comes in from the Heavy North, you've got your sound, and it's very kind of stylistic. It's you guys. So I guess you guys are playing the music. I mean, how does it feel in terms of the connection of the band and the sound?
It's good. I think with different influences as well, because obviously we're onto different sorts of styles in music. I wouldn't necessarily sit down and listen to the genre maybe we play. You know what I mean? Sometimes you would, but sometimes you wouldn't. So but then Kenny's banging to his blues music, and so is Jack as well, and Jose. Steve's more like that Doors and Keys influence, and Marco's into some sort of heavier stuff with complex beats behind it, I guess. So when that all comes together, you're sort of mixing different genres, and then I guess, I don't know, that's what comes out of it, really, I think. I think maybe, obviously, the rhythm section is sort of tighter because it's got more of an understanding of the influences, but then you get that bluesy sort of vocals from obviously the influences from Kenny, and then the guitar riffs and the writing style from Jose and Jack as well. You know what I mean? So it's that sort of merged together, I guess. I mean, anyone can jump in and correct me as well. But
nail on, yeah. I think what we do together is kind of what we align on, isn't it? Like the core thing, like the blues and the sort of the blues rock type thing. And we're just like a good team, really. We just we all sort of have our own little part of the soundscape, and it just works.
Yeah, definitely. I think we maybe got a bit more of an understanding as it's gone on as well, because some of the early stuff, since it's probably more 4 notes on the bass, for example, and maybe a solid rhythm on the drums, and then the chords sort of follow the bass follows the chord progression. But then as it's sort of gone on, the vocals have done its own thing, the bass done its own thing. We sort of learned our instruments, I guess. You know what I mean? So.
All I was going to add to that then was just what you said before, Andy, about you wouldn't necessarily listen to it. I'm kind of to our style. I'm kind of the same. My thing has always been, I'd rather have a band where I like hanging out with everyone than a music a genre I listen to. Do you know what I mean? So I've been in bands where it's it's style of music I listen to, but we haven't gelled or the vibe isn't there or something like that. But with this one, it's like I value that where we can all get along and we all work together well over what we're actually playing. And then what we do play lines up, because there are some corresponding influences. I think it works well. Like I think that's always been my thing, where it's like it's all about the hang than the actual music.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, being a band with your mates, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can tell that comes across when you're on stage together, that it's a really tight bond and it's a very well oiled machine, especially the rhythm section. I must say, fantastic stuff going on there. So I'm not going to cover the debut album too much because obviously I had the rest of the guys on. We covered that in detail. Since then, obviously, you've had some phenomenal live dates over the past 12 months. You've gone away, worked on a new album. You've released the singles Where Are You Now and Round Again. So kudos to you, gents. And recently, you devious boys dropped a new single, right? So you dropped Give a Little Love, just like that, without telling anyone. So firstly...
Is it out?
Some would say we had no plan whatsoever. And we didn't know what we were doing.
So I guess as a starting point, gents, tell us about the song, open to anyone. How did that song come about? And tell us a bit about the idea behind the song.
Wrong people.
Yeah, well, it came out of Jose originally. I think he was trying to write a surf vibe song. So it very mildly falls into that category. Obviously, it's like a Dower style at the core, but we've kind of this album we forayed into a few different like genres that quite diverse from one song to the next. And I think that was the vibe. How it started off, we wanted to have a little dabble into surf because I love surf. I know Jose really likes it, and a few of the other lads too. Jose, he's a machine. Like he'll be in the studio. He can just map out a whole song, and then we'll all just come in and add our bits. And I think that's correct me if I'm wrong, lads. I think that's how.
I think we've refined that a little bit as well. I mean, not refined, but like we're still working on it. But compared to how we did Electric Soul Machine, which was like staggered and kind of like all over the place because of like obviously lockdown and stuff like that. This one we kind of went into it like, okay, so we jam it out live. Then we multi-track the sort of bits, replace the bits in the track, they'll replace, and every song was kind of done the same. Whereas with Electric Soul Machine, we were doing it like one was done live, then another one would be done multi-track, and then this one it was just like say Jose comes in, like Jack said, Jose comes in with the idea, we all jump in and do our part. It was very streamlined, wasn't it? So
yeah, it's a bit more of a collective, I guess this time as well, which was quite nice, rather than being left to your own device and having to sort of guess what someone was doing. You can there and you can see it, have your own input, and you go, why don't you try this or try this, and you can bounce off each other a bit, I guess.
So I was going to say, normally the second album, so by the way, the album Delta Shakedown out Friday, the 24th of October, a very anticipated album that people are really looking forward to. I was going to say, normally the second album is normally a bit more difficult than the first, but it sounds like the actual process of the second album was a bit easier than the first one when you take Lockdown away and the actual kind of combination of all you guys, and obviously you played together now for much longer than what you had done when the first album came out. So fair to say a bit of an easier process this time.
I think so, yeah. And I think maybe like Marco's sort of techniques on the drums and stuff, but I've sort of like honed into his sort of stuff a bit more on this album. With the first time, it was more like maybe looking at like what the melody was there on the guitar, or like trying to follow the root notes of certain things, and went away and learned a few more things, and then sort of listening to his rhythms, or like maybe sort of for the verse on the verse on Delta, where it's like keeping that solid beat all the way through it, that just a kick drum as the riffs keep going through it, but then on the verses just it goes off into its own melodic thing. So it's sort of like you start like touching other people's influences, even though they're not your own. You can influence each other in the band a bit better. And
would you say then that, I guess, as individual musicians, you're better at your instruments now, and I guess collectively as a band, you're also better now?
It's good to say.
Definitely as a band, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that?
It's good to say, yeah, in case someone says no, he's fucking shit.
I've got to say this to the other boys.
Well, Andy, you're doing well.
So no, it's definitely better with working together and the team dynamic, I think. Yeah.
You mentioned, I guess, kind of a few more different genres. So I guess musically, what is how would you say this differs to the last album? Obviously, you've built up a massive core fan base who love your sound, but what can they expect from the second album that maybe wasn't on the first album?
I think with this one
stuff, isn't there? I think there's a lot more like melodic sort of themes throughout.
I think we tried to bring in our influences a bit more to a degree as well. Like similar to Give a Little Love. We've said, well, okay, we're going to try and write a tune like this. Now we're going to try and rewrite a tune like that and pull in from our influences and made it diverse in that way.
I think one thing that's different from the first album, there's a lot more texture on this one. I think that's down to Jack quite a lot, because even when we're playing old songs because he joined after Electric Soul Machine. Even playing old songs now, he's added little layers and little things that I can't unhear now on the old tracks, like whether it's a little bit of tremolo or a little bit of slide, and that's all over the new one, and that's a different touch to the last one, and I think that's down to Jack. Give it a bit more.
It's first album I've played on. Sorry to cut you off there, Mark. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. I was trailing off. You take over. Go ahead.
I didn't play on Electric Soul Machine, and a lot of what I was there to do for that, because I played all the live shows for it. But really, I came in, and my main kind of goal was to pull off live a lot of the stuff that Jose did in the studio. So he played guitars, but obviously they were limited on guitars for the live scenario. So we were replicating that and just adding little bits of the sauce occasionally where possible. So with this one, it's like I had to kind of find a little, again, on stage to tell, like, part of the soundscape, because I kind of fill in a little bit. I tried to fill in where Kenny leaves off and Jose starts, and try not to overlap too much into the two of them. But again, it's it has worked. We've got away with it.
No, it works. Do you know what? It works well. And seeing you live, I kind of completely understand what Mark has said. Like, Jack, although you might not be front facing so much and you're not lead so much, you are doing these little fills and riffs and getting into these little pockets of groove. And Andy, your bass lines are doing these little fills that you might not hear on record, but when you hear them live, you can hear it more. So yeah, kudos to you gents for being an amazing rhythm section of a great band. So along with the album, there's a lot of activity with it, right? So first up, and again, if anything else that I don't mention, feel free to it. I got a listening party, and that's taking place at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, the 18th of October.
Should probably remember that. I should probably put that in my diary. Yeah, it's then, isn't it? Yeah, sounds okay. Delete that. Edit that out.
So you boys all be together?
Keep it in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you boys, are you all together, or will you be going off your separate Twitter accounts? How are you going to do that?
I think so, yeah, separate stuff. Normally I think usually Steve sort of jumps on the main switchboard, and then we'll sort of get on our own little thing, sort of trying to replicate. But yeah, probably doing a worse job. But yeah, he'll be on the main switchboard, as I say.
I'm not on Twitter, but I am logged into the band's Twitter, so I'll be on the band's Twitter, not touching anything, while Steve does. He pilots it.
I'll do whatever Steve tells me.
Steve's the captain. He drives the ship.
He drives the ship. And then you got a busy weekend after the listening party, right? You're in Wax and Beans over the weekend, and at the Jacaranda on the Sunday as well. So busy weekend for you boys as well.
Yeah, looking forward to getting back into, especially those two places as well. Obviously, they've sort of been kind to us over the years, especially from when we first started as well. And then Wax and Beans as well. Ben over there has obviously done a cracking job with the pre-sales of the album as well. So he's obviously helped us out massively. Sort of took up that little level above where obviously we sort of didn't know where to take it. So obviously he sort of held our hand a little bit, I guess.
How excited are you, gents, about the album, right? I mean, this is the calm before the storm, I'm guessing. It's quite nice. You've got about 3 weeks before the album hits. How excited are you for people to hear the album?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
We can go 1 to 10.
No, 11. No. Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, I'm looking forward to playing it more so, really. Like a lot of tunes that we like Andy said, we are going. We've not learnt, like, and Kenny's said it on previous interviews. Like we've got this funny thing because we'll go and layer guitars in the studio. So we've recorded songs and people have heard them, and we don't actually know how to play them yet. And there's loads of songs that we've revealed.
That's a new thing for me in this band. It's like the idea of recording a song you've never played live. All the bands I've been in before, you'd hammer songs live before you actually record them. And now it's like, because there's a little bit of anticipation, people, and you're kind of you're preparing it before you take it out live. that's a new thing for me. Is like getting in the studio, recording a song, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to play this live now. How did I play that? I can't remember what we did. Like,
get a bit nervous about it. Yeah, I've just loads of songs that we've really enjoyed recording, and I just really can't wait to play live. So yeah, looking forward to that.
And in terms of playing live, you got, as well as like the in-stores and the weekend of the album launch, you've got other gigs coming up, right? So you're at the Cavern on Wednesday, the 4th of October, for a very special gig, a tribute gig for Kieran McKay.
Forward to that one as well. Obviously, it's coming up Sunday, so obviously beforehand, people will probably know that we've got a bit of a surprise for that gig as well that we've been working on together collectively. Bit of a tip of the hat to people involved. So
really privileged to get invited as well.
Yeah, so it's obviously great to get invited, and it's great to be a part of it. So it's obviously we've laid something to give back. So yeah, looking forward to that one for sure.
And then the big one in Friday, 1st of December. It feels like you have big December gigs, right? Since I've been aware of you, there's always a big Heavy North December gig in Liverpool. Not different this year, Friday the 1st of December at the Camp and Furnace. I mean, that show promises to be massive.
Yeah, I look forward to
the
that.
pinnacle, some might say, yeah.
We've got some rehearsals lined up with the other band members as well. Well, the people who join us for the proper gigs anyway, shall we say. Got some like the added rhythm section. Obviously got the backing singers, and then brass instruments and sort of different parts of that as well. So the drummers, and then we've got the quartet as well jumping on board. So we've got a gig coming up where we're going to obviously start rehearsing with them live as well. So it's good to get back in the rehearsal space with other musicians as well who are playing the same songs.
Great stuff. And if anyone is listening to this and hasn't ordered Delta Shakedown yet, or hasn't bought tickets to see you guys, how do they do it? How do they find you? Where's the best place to get everything that they would need to from the Heavy North?
Depends Instagram.
Theheavynorth.com.
So heavynorth.com. You guys.
Heavynorth.com. That's pretty much everything. Links to everything, like the Bandcamp, the online store, all the social media pages. That's the best place to get to everything.
Great stuff. So, gents, in terms of your own musical taste, then you've mentioned kind of Heavy North fuses a lot of different musical genres. Again, I'll start with you, Mark, on this one. What are you into, Mark? What genres are you into, and what are you listening to at the moment?
To be honest, I mainly, like Andy said before, I do like heavy stuff, but that can mean a broad things. I was always into like quite a lot of punk and pop punk and metal and kind of like strains of that, like metalcore and stuff like that. But yeah, I like riff-based stuff. I like stuff that's quite heavy, whether it's instrumentally or but then there's a lot of pop that's heavy. You know what I mean? I'm listening to a bit of Post Malone and Billie Eilish lately. That's got some heavy sort of like themes to it. But yeah, all sorts really. What I'm listening to right now. Listen to a lot of a band, like Canadian band called Counterparts. Saw them live last month. That was decent. Like they're quite heavy. None of this ties into the Heavy North really. So yes, I keep joking.
Heavy.
Except for the Except for the Heavy North. But I keep joking that at some point I'm going to sneak a blast beat into a Heavy North song. I'm convinced I can do it. It like in some way, because you can. There's ways like it comes. Like, I think the earliest blast beat kind of comes from jazz in a weird way. So I'm convinced I can do it, and no one's going to notice this, and I'll be happy. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, then the stuff that kind of ties into the Heavy North a little bit more as well. Like my biggest drum influences probably actually come from the not so heavy end of the spectrum. Like I'm really into a band called Death Cab for Cutie, which is like an American indie sort of like, they come from like the sort of original sort of emo sort of like scene. Their drummer Jason McGair, the way he plays and records drums has always been a big influence. How he kind of, it's not like, he doesn't really think about how he's going to recreate it live. I don't think. There are always very, very specific sounds to the song, which I've never dived too much into, but I really want to in the future. And then what else? Bands like the Gaslight Anthem, which is a bit more like in the bluesy punk sort of end of things, which is how I sort of see myself fitting into the Heavy North a little bit, kind of bridging that gap a little bit between the blues and the slightly heavier stuff. So yeah.
Great stuff. And Andy, what about you? What genres of music are you into, and any one or anything that you listen to at the moment?
Yeah, what I'm into is more like, at the minute anyway, it's a lot of like funk stuff, more so because it's more like bass driven, like just to get inspired by like different bass sounds and different tones and whatnot. But yeah, so big like jazz influence as well at the minute. There's all like lessons stuff I'm doing, like just sort of learning like modes and scales and all that boring stuff basically. Just like getting into like Jaco Pastorius and like big Joe Dart fan at the minute as well, like sort of learn lots of his stuff and just get like metronome and like 16th notes and just keep it into like a sort of solid beat really. Just that's when like sort of home into Marco's sort of influence a bit, because like it's just solid like on the beat, so it's good to like just always try and maybe fit like 16th notes in if they can be fitted in, and just try and like up your game maybe a little bit, you know what I mean? So it's listen to people who are trying to make you, when you learn their stuff, it takes 3 weeks to learn it, as opposed to you can learn it in 2 minutes, because you know it's just root notes or whatever, you know what I mean? So a lot of like Joe Dart stuff at the minute, like Wolfpack, if you've listened to them, or like Theo Katzman, amazing like musicians. But originally it was more like a punk stuff, like The Clash, Sex Pistols, Joy Division, that sort of like heavy sort of, just had something to say really. So I guess it was that. But I guess it was always more like a bass or like rhythm section, never more like a lead side of like sort of guitar virtuosos. It was more like a rhythm or a bass sort of drive, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I'm into at the minute.
And Jack, what about you? What are you into, and who are you listening to at the moment?
Right, I have a couple of different categories of what I listen to. So obviously, I love guitar virtuosity, like any other guitar player. So there's music that I listen to as a player, and then general bands that I listen to just for pleasure or ambience or for different things. So yeah, as a player, I'm obsessed with Philip Chase, and I suppose I've got like Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan to thank for him. But what he does, it just like Hendrix on steroids. Do you know what I mean? He's just taken that up a notch and just plays with such aggression, and I love it's like the thing that ties into Hendrix and like guitarists like Robin Trower and the stuff he does with like a Univibe and like fuzz face and strat tones and stuff like that. Just that's me as a player. That's what I love. But then everything else I listen to. So if I was in the car driving somewhere, generally it's or any other time, music that I listen to for ambience would be like psychedelic music, krautrock, shoegaze. Like my favorite band in the world are Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. I've been like that since I was about 15 when I first heard them. Another band I'm really, really into, and I have been since I first got into them, was the Black Angels. They're kind of close second. And I quite like the avant-garde stuff as well, like the kind of experimental end of like the Velvet Underground, like the kind of John Cale era stuff. But at the minute, I'm hammering Marcus King. I've been into him for quite a while. I mean, Jose went to watch him a few months ago, and that was some show. That's kind of like we were watching him, like, right, we need to try and pull from this a little bit for the Camp and Furnace gig, because that was like crazy. It was similar setup. It was like they had a few like they had like gospel singers, like a brass section. There's about 15 people on stage, and just absolute virtuosity on all counts. So yeah, that at the minute really.
So you mentioned some great acts there, but let me take you back, gents, to when you were younger lads and laying your cards out on the table. It's time to hear about your first records and first singles in complete honesty, and remember that there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure on this podcast. It's just a pleasure.
Jack might mention Madonna again in a minute.
That's not even a guilty pleasure. That's well into that.
Jack, I'll stick with you then, Jack. What was the first record you bought?
You know what? I'm not ashamed of it. It's dead cool. The Prodigy, Fat of the Land. I went and got it on cassette in WH Smith's when I must have been about 8. I remember my dad being like, "What the can I swear? Can I swear?"
Yeah, Jack. You can say anything you like, mate. Yeah.
I blew my dad up here for swearing at kid. He was like, "What the fuck is he got this?" all that bloody head banging shit. I mean, these are, I'm taking that for amusing to like take that and James Blunt and that type of stuff. But yeah, he was quite surprised by my purchase at that time. But yeah, The Prodigy, Fat of the Land, great album, love it.
That is a great album. Andy, what about you? Is as risque as The Prodigy, or was it slightly less?
Yeah. No, I don't think it was as mental as that really. But mine was. I remember buying a CD of Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. I know Kenny calls me a depressing bastard, to be honest, for like listening to Joy Division, but it's my like pinnacle band for me. Like I loved them when I was growing up, so I remember buying that anyway. I'll keep it sweet. It was just that.
I completely understand it as the bass player, right? Because the bass lines in there are pretty fundamental to the actual songs.
Yeah, definitely, especially like playing high up, because you couldn't hear the amp in the rehearsal room that they practiced in, because you could just hear like growling guitars. So you played really high up to get the higher frequencies to hear it, and that give them their sound. Essentially, playing like melodic, like high up bass lines. You know what I mean? It's it's something sprouted out of nothing, I guess, really.
Yeah. And what about you, Mark? What was your first record?
The first one I actively sought out to buy, yeah. I think it was AFI, the December Underground. Yeah, Andy doing.
Tough ones.
I forgot there's no video on this, is there? But yeah, AFI December Underground. Because I remember seeing it on Kerrang the first time. It was the first time I heard screaming in music. Because the whole song most of the song is actually like, it's a typical punk sort of song. It was their sort of like first mainstream sort of hit. So it was getting blasted on Kerrang and I think Scuzz at the time and stuff like that. And the whole song's kind of got a typical punk sort of structure, but a very pop structure with a punk vibe. And then it just goes into this middle section where the singer starts screaming. I remember just really going, "What's this? Like, what's going on here?" And then I went out and got the album, and that was my first gig as well. Well, my first gig I actually wanted to go and see myself, like, and that was a bit of a gateway into the heavier stuff. Going through their back catalogue, hearing their earlier stuff, which was much heavier and much punkier than the newer stuff. Like, so that was a bit of a gateway one for me as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
We do kids' parties as well, by the way. We're not always this.
Right. It's all good. So this podcast is all about you guys collating your fantasy festival. Are you guys big fans of festivals? Have you been to many? So Jack's nodding away. Jack, you a big festival fan?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit long in the tooth now. I don't get the opportunity as much as I'd like to these days. But yeah, back in the day, that's all I used to do. I used to go quite a few every summer. Love it. Absolutely love it.
And what about you, Andy? You into festivals or not so much?
No, not a chance. I went to I need a shower and I need the toilet. That's what I need. I struggle when there's none of them. But we don't we done Kendall Calling recently, and I remember all the lads camped over and I was just like, I don't know. Possibly it's fucking terrifying me. No chance.
I was quite envious of you when you rocked up in a fresh set of clothes on the Saturday, and me and Kenny had been there since like the Thursday and probably had about 2 hours kip.
I wonder why everyone was standing there in fresh clothes for a bit.
And Mark, what about you? You a big festival fan?
No, but I think I could be. I think I've had a couple of bad festival experiences that kind of made me go, I'm not into this. Like, so I went to my first ever festival. I've only been to two. My first one was when I was like 16, going to Download, and it was sick, and it's one of my favourite memories. And then my next one was Leeds Fest when I was in uni, and it was the worst experience of my life. Saw a few of my favourite bands, but then it was just like, I think it was when festivals were starting to go through this trendy phase where it was just people off that, like, I know people go to, I'm a bit boring, I'm not really into getting shit-faced or anything like that. So it's just loads of people raving in the campsites, bringing their own, sure those people set up their own DJ, tents or like PA systems in the campsite. Like, I remember getting no fucking sleep. Setting me tent up on a muddy slope because there was nowhere to camp, and I got woken up on the Sunday to someone going, "Oh my god, there's people in there," and I put my head out the tent, and there was an ambulance rolling backwards with two people holding up about to crush my tent with me in it. I just remember going, "Fuck this! I'm getting a hotel."
I'd go to that festival. That sounds cool.
But I think I could be, because I hear things about like Glastonbury and then Kendall was really good as well. I could imagine enjoying something like Kendall. I just didn't want to go to a festival again after that.
I don't blame you. So before we move on to your fantasy festival, do you guys have a favourite gig? Again, not as you playing, but as you kind of standing back watching a gig unfurl in front of you. So I'll start with you, Jack. Do you have a favourite gig at all, mate?
Yeah, I do. It was just the era, I think. Like, sort of early noughties was great for me, like around 2005. Like I said before, my favourite band are Black Rebel, and I went to watch them I've seen them loads, and I'd seen them quite a few times by this point. But it was just amazing. So they were playing at the O2 in Liverpool, and again, this is how I got onto my other kind of favourite band, the Black Angels. They supported them in Liverpool, and it was just, they were both at a really, like, Black Angels were just starting out. They were touring Passover. It was probably one of the first times they came to the UK, and they were quite different then. They were like more like the like the Velvet Underground than they are now. They had like a drum machine player and like half a drum kit, and it was just like really, really cool. And then Black Rebel, it was one of the best times I've ever seen them. They were touring Baby 81 at the time, I think. And it was just such a cool gig. Like everything about it was just so moody that the lights. They had this like brown light with smoke, and all you could really see for the whole gig was their silhouettes. And they came out to like My Wild Love by the Doors. Just everything about it was just amazing. So that.
Very cool. Andy, what about you? Do you have a favourite gig at all?
I don't know, to be honest. There's a few obviously standout ones. I went to see the Arctic Monkeys' last album at the Cricket Club in Manchester. That was amazing because, to be honest, surprise, like sort of support act as well was, well, not surprise, it was a surprise for me. I'd not really looked who was playing beforehand, and then the Hives. First time I'd seen them live, and honest to God, it was unbelievable. It was like someone just lit the blue touch paper on a live wire, you know what I mean? It just didn't stop all gig, just like unbelievable, like great front man, got the whole crowd going as well. That was a bit of a standout one, and then probably that, to be honest. Of recent anyway, there's been a fair few. I went to see first band I saw was a band called Stiff Little Fingers, punk band, and just like I remember being 15, I think I was, and it was with one of my father's mates, and he just fucking pushed me in this mosh pit, and I was just like a washing machine, like a small kid getting battered by these like, punks, and I was like, but the next day was great. I was in science, and I was just sat there thinking, fucking well better than being here. And that was probably when I got the bug, really, of just like enjoying music, I guess, just thinking it's just like escapism, isn't it, really, I guess.
And what about yourself, Mark? Do you have a favourite gig at all?
Yeah, that AFI gig, again, just because like it was at a point where playing drums but not playing in bands yet, and I had no idea how a gig happens, like sort of like I had no idea what goes on behind the scenes or anything like that. So it was all new to me, so I wasn't going in with like, nowadays I'll go to a gig and sort of go, expecting what order they're going to play the songs in, or just trying to look at what gear they're using, trying to like break down how they're getting this sound, how they're getting that sound. I was just going in pure, just like, I'm just into this, like. And then another one that's always stuck out is Jimmy Eat World. For no reason then, it was just a boss gig. They just sounded great. Like, I remember forgetting my earplugs and being a bit, oh God, I'm going to be wrecked tomorrow. And just the sound was so good. It was just like, didn't need it, didn't feel like it was damaging me. It was just so well balanced and had a good volume and everything like that. And they were so tight. It was like listening to the album. So those are a couple that stick out for me. Like,
great stuff. So a couple of great acts mentioned, a couple of great gigs, and now we'll move on to the Fantasy Festival element. So like I said, at the top of the podcast, for any first-time listeners, our guests tonight, so Mark, Jack and Andy get to collate their Fantasy Festival, so they get to choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full, and they get to choose an encore, which can be any song that all 5 of their acts can perform together to end their Fantasy Festival. So very simple, 5 acts, 5 time slots. So like I said, at the top, I had Ian Key on for episode 139. He created his Eclectifest Fantasy Festival winner last episode. In his opening act, he had a band called Shade on. Super Seconds had Casey Chambers. Midway Madness had Self-Esteem playing her Prioritised Pleasure album. Pre-headline act had The Wedding Present. And for his headline act had Billy Bragg on. And for his encore, he had all 5 of those acts play a Kirsty McCall medley. So very easy, but before we go through your 5 acts, gents, you need to give your Fantasy Festival a name and a venue. So any ideas on what you're going to call your Fantasy Festival?
Yeah, we'll just pluck something off the top of our heads. We've not thought about this at all, have we? So we're going to go with...
Take this one.
We're going to go with THN Hootenanny Fields. And it's a bit of a nod to Delta Shakedown because it's so diverse. We were joking in the practice room saying that it's going to be like an episode of Jules Holland's Hootenanny because it's so so out there. So yeah, we're going to go with that, I think.
Awesome.
THN Hootenanny Fields.
Okay, the Hootenanny Fields, and you can hold this anywhere, gents. You can hold this in Liverpool. You can hold it outside the UK. You can go to wherever you want. We will follow you, big, small, outside, inside, wherever you guys like. Do you have a venue we're going to hold your Fantasy Festival in?
I think did we land on the moon? Not being very imaginative here. We had a couple of ideas that was like breaking reality a little bit, kind of like taking existing venues and making them like mad capacity and things like that. But we played it quite safe in the end and said Sefton Park.
Well, there's more to it than that, Mark. I mean, like, it's a place that is very common to us all. I got married in Sefton Park. It's just...
I feel like a dick now. Thanks, Jack.
No, we've been to festivals there. They have lymphs there. We had a few funny experiences in that. The last time I went there, I ended up. I overdone it. Didn't I? And I ended up in the fetal position in Kenny's fold up wheelbarrow, just spewing on the floor, trying to find my way through this sea of legs while Echo and the Bunnymen were playing.
And
I think that was we've been there twice. I think the Heavy North played there 1 year, and I was in the band there. I went to watch. But yeah, it's a place that we've got in common, and it's nearby, and it can hold quite a few people.
I love Jack saying he may have overdone it a little while being in the fetal position, spewing on the floor to Echo and the Bunnymen. Amazing, great work.
Hey, you've not seen him in worse positions, that's why.
Yeah, that's quite mild, yeah.
Great stuff. So before we talk about your 5 acts, gents, any acts who you want to shout out who you love but just aren't coming with us to the Hootenanny Fields?
I'll throw a few. I think I was joking, saying, shall I just have this slot? This could just be solely mine, but now but a couple I threw in were Architects, like, but I think from Paint or something, but metalcore. One of the earlier metalcore bands I kind of got into. I've seen them live a few times. Like they were up there on my list of favourite bands. And then Thrice, kind of like post-hardcore-y, heavy-ish, not that heavy nowadays, but like, you know, that was another one I threw up there. So they were my 2 missed acts that didn't make it to the bill. Like,
I saw the Architects support Biffy Clyro earlier this year. They were excellent. They were really good.
Oh, they're sick. I think he's on one of the latest albums. Simon Neil, isn't he, as well? That was mad.
Yeah,
he features on one of the tracks.
They were good. They were really good live. Much better than what I thought they'd be. They were excellent.
Yeah, one for me that I was going to put in, but I didn't, was Alabama Shakes. I've been getting into them recently. Some of their stuff's unbelievable, but I don't know. I picked someone else that was like I've already mentioned actually, but just purely because of how they are like as a live band. But yeah, Alabama Shakes would be incredible.
Yeah, she's got an amazing voice.
There's a boss musician called Ron Gallo. If you've not heard of him as well, I've listened to him.
Yeah,
fucking
I'm into him. He's boss.
It came on like some shuffle like playlist I was on anyway, like on Spotify, and it came on. He got a song called "Young Lady, You're Scaring Me."
Yeah,
his voice and the guitar and that is just second to none. It's brilliant.
He's from Texas. He supported the Black Angels once when I went to see them. He's boss.
Is he? I didn't know he's from there.
Yeah. There's a great song called "Started a War." I think that's my favourite song by his. It's awesome. He's got a great voice.
I went to see him. There it is.
Hey, Jose.
What's happening?
Jose,
I don't know what you were talking about. Sorry, Jose passed by and said, "Do you want to say hi?"
No, it's all right. Yeah. Jack mentioned the Black Angels as well, which I'd put them back in, but I don't know whether he's put them in anyway, to be honest. But I don't know. I'll find out. But I went to see them in Texas. Actually, went to South by Southwest Festival, and they were playing in some hotel at like stupid o'clock in the morning. So yeah, they were boss.
So some big acts aren't coming with us. We can only take 5. So 2 o'clock then. Time for the Hootenanny Fields to get underway. Who's picking the opening act, and who are you going to pick, gents?
This was my only requirement. I said I'm going to take the opener. I like the kind of. Really? No, I think that was a group thing. Oh, you know, like no, please. No, you're right. Don't start giving this away. No, your cryptic messages. Right. like any good sort of multi-band gig or festival or whatever, you know, you start with an acoustic opener. I'm going with John Martin. You know, it's his perfect balance for me. He's like obviously absolute guitar virtuoso, like mesmerising, but also like really pleasant kind of folk singer vibe as well. He's got some really upbeat songs, really cool songs. You know, people, you know, it's one for the guitarist to watch. And just particularly, you know, if we had to get really specific, it's like late 70s, because he was, you know, there was many incarnations of John Martin. I'd say, like, you know, late 70s. I've seen some footage where he played at Rock Palace around about that time, and he did like a version of Seven Black Roses, and he tells the story where he kind of put it together as like a visual guitar solo to wow club owners and stuff like that. And I love that as well, like the storytelling in between, and I was a man of the world and stuff. I think it'd be a great opener anyway. Great
stuff. So second time John Martin's been picked. He was picked 90 episodes ago by Ian Prowse from Pele, who had him as his Midway Madness act. So John Martin back on the podcast. He's going to play your Fantasy Festival. Man of Taste indeed. He's going to play from 2 till 3. We'll take a half-hour break. That takes half 3. Time for your Super Seconds act. So who's picking the Super Seconds act, and who are you picking, gents?
I think I got the slot, and I'm going with. I think I mentioned them earlier. I'm going with the Gaslight Anthem, one of my favourite bands, and again, just because of all the bands I could pick that would be acceptable, this one I feel like is cool because again, that bluesy punk thing, it's how I sort of, when I picture how I fit into the band, they're a band that kind of pops into my head a little bit like, me reference point in a way sometimes. So yeah, that's Gaslight Anthem. That's my pick for the second slot.
Great shout. You're going to play any songs in particular? I mean, I know quite a lot about Gaslight Anthem. I was a big fan around kind of American slang and 59 sound. Any songs that you'd have to have and play, Mark? Any songs that you'd have to have and play?
I think for this one, there's one of the slots that have to play an album, don't they? And I think I picked this one. I'd have them play all of Handwritten, because that's the album that came out around the time I really got into them properly. I remember getting them when Kerrang featured them, when they did they had 45 out, but then Handwritten came out, and it just stuck with me, that album. It's one of my favourites, so that all of Handwritten I'd have them play.
Great shout. So Gaslight Anthem also making their second Fantasy Festival appearance. They're going to play from 3:30 to 4:30 at your Fantasy Festival. So they're going to have a half-hour break. That takes us to your Midway Madness slot. The band going to play from 5 till 6. So who's going to play in your Midway Madness slot?
I got this one. I picked the Hives again just for the energy they've got when they're on stage. It's just, they look the part already in like the sort of lightning bolt suits, like sort of all uniform. And then it's, even if you've never seen them, don't know any of their songs, it's just like watching a firework display. It's unbelievable. So yeah, they got that slot definitely.
I know of the Hives. I've never seen them live, but everyone who has seen them live always says you've got to see this band live because they're just unreal.
He sort of fell off the radar a little bit for me. Like, obviously doing that sort of Hate to Say I Told You So, and everyone and the dog sort of knew that song at one point, and then they've just released a new album, and they've got a song on there called Bogus Operandi, and it's quality. But yeah, amazing live bands, so it did get the crowd going as well.
Yeah, absolutely would. So again, the Hive's second time they've been picked for a fantasy festival. They're going to take your Midway Madness slot and play from 5 till 6. So 3 acts down, got 2 acts to go. Yeah, fourth act is going to be a pre-headline act. They're going to play from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So who are going to be your pre-headliners?
This is the one that we all tried to align on. We were talking about before. We were like, what have we got in common? And Mark pointed out it's the Black Keys. Like, we're all well into the Black Keys. I remember like the first time I got into them, it was like I think Magic Potion, that kind of era. I remember it was like one of the music channels I heard just got to be on the telly, and it was like, wow, I need to get some records by these, like the guitar tone and the dynamic with the two of them. I love 2-piece bands and a lot of basic guitar as well. And I remember seeing them. From then, I kind of watched them progress. I remember seeing them at Glastonbury in like 2008 when they were touring Brothers. I think it was 2008. And that's when they really hit like commercial success. Then that's when like everyone was onto them. But yeah, we were all banged into the Black Keys, and that's one we share.
Any tracks you'd have to have? Obviously, they've got a massive catalogue now because they've been around for quite a long time. Any songs again you'd have to have the Black Keys play?
Thick Freakness. Sorry, go on.
No, go on, mate. Go on.
But yeah, I'll throw that one in. Thick Freakness. I love that tune.
Yeah, for me it would be Heavy Soul or Little Black Submarines, just because it's got a bit of everything in that one as well.
It's a great shout. So Black Keys are going to be your pre-headliners. Again, they make their second Fantasy Festival appearance and will be your pre-headline acts. So they're going to give us an hour and a half, play till 8 o'clock. We'll take 1 more half-hour break, and it'll be time for your headline act, gents. So you're going to get 2.5 hours to headline your Fantasy Festival. Andy is shaking his head. Andy's not a happy man. I'm interested.
This fella, right, who's been picked is like fucking shit on a blanket. He gets everywhere.
I must confess, after 140 episodes, this is the first time a guest has called their headliner shit on a blanket. He gets everywhere.
You've really built this up, Andy.
Maybe cut that out.
No, it's good. We went for... We collectively all strongly decided that it would be Nile Rodgers and Chic, because he's just a great, every time you watch. I mean, someone would have to have a word with him beforehand and say, look, like, don't tell everyone about how much money you've got. We don't care how many Grammys you've got. Just play the music, right? And like, but you can't help but have a good time watching them. Like, no matter who you are, he's just. I've seen him at festivals loads, and I remember like even Kendall, when we played Kendall, he headlined on the first night, and I woke up like with sore hips. I was gyrating that much. It's just it's a crowd pleaser. So obviously this festival is never going to flow. We're all too varied in what we listen to, so we just thought we'd just do everyone a favour and stick him on.
I guess like Nile Rodgers, you get like loads of different acts for the price of one, right? Because he's written so many different iconic songs. He throws in so many different acts to the mix, like Duran Duran. You get a bit of Prince, you get a bit of Shaka Khan. Like there's a whole heap of stuff he'll end up playing.
Yeah, bit of Bowie as well.
Yeah.
Still stand by my statement though.
Yeah, he turned up at the Taylor Hawkins gig I went to last year and ended up playing like Let's Dance with loads of like different rock people.
Josh Homme,
It was mental. So
I went to that gig as well. It was amazing.
That was an amazing gig. That was literally a Fantastival. As close as you're ever going to get to a Fantastival. That was ridiculous, that gig. That was a great one. So, Nile Rodgers and Chic make their third Fantasy Festival appearance. They're going to play 2.5 hours, and at 11 o'clock they're going to bring back out on stage the Black Keys, the Hives, Gaslight Anthem and John Martin, and they all get to play one song that you collectively are going to tell them to play. Heavy North can come out as well if you guys want to come out and jam with them. It's all good. But what song are you going to have all your Fantasy Festival acts to play?
Can't remember what it was. Genuinely can't remember.
Did we pick one? I don't remember. We picked one, did we?
Can't remember. Yeah. Jack, I think. Honestly, I can't remember. Jack, I think you said it.
We all strongly decided together, and those two are just flagging that I can't remember. The specials, You're Wondering Now. In fact, they didn't do the original, did they? But You're Wondering Now, it's just like the best last song of any gig ever. It just fits like, and it's the theme. It's great. It sounds like quite a dark song, like, lyrically, but it's when in the context of representing a gig, it's great, and it's the best last song ever, I think.
All right,
that's probably a band. When you said before, like a band. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, mate. But when you said a band that like maybe didn't make the festival, when you said the specials to like early on today, I was like, yeah, like 100%. Like that was a band. Like it was a band I never seen, but got to meet Terry Hall. But like I wish I'd seen them live. What a band!
Yeah, I've gone to really like them as well. I think through you actually, Andy. I think you probably put me onto them. I've never been into like ska and reggae and that type of stuff. But I really like the specials.
How did you meet Terry Hall, Andy? I must ask before we wrap this one up. How did you meet Terry Hall, and what was he like?
It's alright. Yeah, it's cool. And I used to work at like a live events company, and he came in to like look at like some pre-production stuff, and he was just in the warehouse there basically. So yeah, got to stand by, and so it's a bit like childish whilst he walked past, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. So let's lock your Fantasy Festival in. So we've got Hootenanny Fields taking place at Sefton Park. Opening act, we've got John Martin. Super Seconds, we've got Gaslight Anthem, and they're going to play their album Handwritten in Full. Midway Madness, we've got the Hives. Pre-headline act, we've got the Black Keys. Your headline act is going to be Nile Rodgers and Chic. And to finish your Fantasy Festival, they're all going to play You're Wondering Now. Gents, you happy to lock that one in to the Fantastival Vaults?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got to say, that was a lot more coordinated than the rest of your bandmates episode. That was beautifully done in your Fantasy Festival. Clear thought gone into it, so I can only commend you chaps for a wonderful Fantasy Festival. So before we finish this one, gents, like we said, you got the album coming out in 3 weeks. It's almost upon us. What are your plans for the future? I mean, I know we've got gigs to talk about. I mean, what are your hopes for the album? What are your plans for the future? Where do you see the Heavy North, I guess, in the next 12 months?
I don't think
bigger and better gig this time now. Yeah. So like, yeah.
I think just hopefully ramp up. Hopefully people like the album, and the gigs just keep getting hopefully bigger and better, and we just push on with it. I don't think there's any plan further than that. So I think that's all we're really hoping for.
So we got the album, Delta Shakedown. We've got loads of gigs. Again, let's plug the website in and tell people where they can go if they haven't pre-ordered the album yet, or where they can go to get gig tickets. So shout out whatever you want. You can shout out the website or the socials, wherever you want to push. Here's the opportunity, Jen. So where can people find you to purchase the album or any Heavy North gig tickets or merch or anything that they need from you?
You can find everything to do with the Heavy North at theheavynorth.com. The best place to find all the links to all the merch, tickets, all the social media links. Yeah, that'll be your first port of call for anything Heavy North, heavynorth.com. Theheavynorth.com.
That's like a proper sales pitch.
Hey, someone's got to be professional here, Jack.
That was a bit snakes.
So that is it. What a way to end it. And thanks to everyone for listening to the 140th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. If you've enjoyed this one, please subscribe. You can give the Fantastival Podcast a review on iTunes, or you can give us a follow on Spotify and also rate the show and also comment on the episode on Spotify, which is a fairly new feature. So make sure to do that if you haven't done so already, as well as the Heavy North being on Twitter. So are the Fantastival Podcast. So if you don't give us a follow, make sure to do so at FantastivalP. And if you're not on Twitter and want to contact the podcast, you can do that at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we don't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from the guys about the acts they've mentioned. I'll make a nice little Spotify playlist for anyone who hasn't heard any of the songs that may have been spoken about on this episode. So, Andy, Mark, Jack, a massive thank you for making the time as a triple header to come on the Fantastival Podcast. How have you found it?
Well, thanks for having us, mate. Yeah, it was great. I remember talking to you in the Water Rats and saying how excited I was to do this. I don't normally enjoy doing interviews, but it's been great. I was particularly prior to Delta Shakedown, because I didn't really have a lot to talk about because it wasn't on wasn't part of the recording process. So, yeah, I was just there, just not saying anything for the most part. So it's nice to be able to contribute, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm usually sorry, Mark. Go on. I didn't mean to cut you off there, mate. I think there's a bit of a delay on yours in particular, so it seems like
Has it been bad?
No, it's been okay.
No, it's been fine.
Yeah.
I've actually got no Wi-Fi. I'm on my 4G. I've had to hack it today.
Nice. Yeah, no, I've loved it, mate. Thanks for having us on. I'm usually washing my hair when these things happen, but it was good to get involved, definitely.
Mate, a band's only as good as its rhythm section, and you boys are top. So I wish you all the luck for the future. I can't wait to hear Delta Shakedown and see you next time you boys are in the capital. So thank you to Andy, Mark and Jack. Like I said, I'll be back next week with episode number 141. So please make sure to join me for that one. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word. And that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.